If it blinds me when I'm looking this way, that's when I know something's wrong. Ah, okay. So you're worried about the camera, not me. You're worried about the angle? All right. I'll take it. Thank you. We good to go, sir? السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. We begin in the name of Allah and ask Him to send His timeless, choicest, most pure, most abundant peace, blessings, and mercy upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his wives and his family members and his companions and all those who follow their example till the day of judgment, begging Allah to bestow His favor upon us and make us amongst them. Allahumma ameen. Can someone just close the door, Umar? If you could just, yeah, there you go. Someone's closing it from the outside. Great. Continuing with another story today, and it's a very interesting story. It's not a long one at all. And it is about a man named Bishr al-Hafi. Bishr is his name. Al-Hafi. What does al-Hafi mean? Hafi. Huh? Bear. Yeah, and haf means bear. But when you say Hafi, particularly, it means bare foot. Yeah, barefoot. That's what it usually means. But it could mean just bear. So his name is Bishr the Barefoot. Why? It's a weird name, isn't it? It's a weird nickname. His real name was Bishr ibn al-Harith, and he was from modern-day Iran, Persia. And the tales about him differ. There's not a lot about his immediate upbringing. Some say he became Muslim as a young man, and some say he was born Muslim. Both are possible. He was born in the year 152 Hijri. So that's how many years after the death of the Prophet ﷺ? Huh? He's born in the year 152. How many years after the death of the Prophet ﷺ? So 152 Hijri, so we're counting 152 years since what happened? The Hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ from Mecca to Medina, which he did at the age of 53. So this is the timeline that we're drawing, so we can understand when we see our Hijri dates, which is when you read anything in Islamic history, the date will be in Hijri. So you got to have that timeline. So that equates to around 770. It is just important to get the idea of where we're talking. It's not relevant to the story. And he was a wealthy young man. And he wasn't religious at all, what we would call religious. Sorry, I know you're... In fact, he was into the party scene. He had a moderate amount of wealth, and he loved entertainment. He would love to go to gatherings where they eat, drink alcohol, read poetry, and just stay doing that day after day after day. Why? Because they could afford it. Right? They didn't need to work day in and day out. It was a group of youth like him who were rich and into that party life, into that luxurious, chasing that party life, as many people continue to do till today. Chasing the entertainment, chasing that pleasure. And he says, when they asked him, how did you get to where you were? He says, one day I was going home from one of these parties, one of these gatherings. And perhaps even he was drunk, like he drank from before that. Some mentioned that he was actively drinking at the time. And as he's going home, and this is his day in and day out, this is what he lives for. Deen is not on his mind. He lives for this scene. He lives just to have fun. On his way home, he sees a small parchment on the floor, a worn out piece of paper, or something like paper. And out of curiosity, he picks it up. He says, I looked close to it and I found written on it was the name of Allah. Maybe it's a piece of a letter, it's a piece of somebody's notes, a piece of Quran, who knows? But it's just a small piece of paper, it's not a full book. It's just small, who knows how big it is, but it's handheld. And it has the name of Allah. And he says, قَدْ وَطِئَتْهُ الْأَقْدَامِ, and it has footprints all over it. People have been stopping this all day and all night. Why? Because it's on the floor. So I looked into my pocket and I found a few silver coins, a very small sum. And I went to the marketplace. He doesn't know why. There's no reason for this. Just he felt that this piece of paper with Allah's name on it shouldn't be on the ground. It shouldn't be covered in footprints. It's not right. That's the little that he thought organically, sincerely, with his lifestyle. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala appreciated it. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala appreciates anything that you do. He is ash-shakur. He is the appreciative. The quantity never matters to Allah. Because if you did 1 trillion hasanat, He would not gain anything the same way if you did 1 hasanah. And if you did 1 trillion sayyat, He would not lose anything, just no different than if you did 1 sayyah, 1 evil deed. He does not change. Benefit and harm are foreign concepts to Allah. They don't exist. He's not benefited and He's not harmed. So His name being on the ground, being stepped on, harmed him the least. And Bishr picking it up and deciding to do something special to it didn't benefit Allah in the least. But Bishr's life changed forever. He says, I used those few silver pennies, I went to the marketplace and I bought some perfume. And I dusted off the name and I perfumed that parchment. And I went home and I put it on a mantelpiece. No intention to change. Not, oh Allah, this is my tawbah, please. None of that. Just the name of Allah shouldn't be on the ground. I'm a horrible person, but I know at least that much. And this is an important part of the story. This is the whole story, by the way. The rest is very little. This is the whole story. This is my whole point to us today. This is a special shout out to everybody who thinks that they're too dirty to be here, or that they don't belong here, or they're the odd man or odd woman out, or that for some reason or the other, that piety or the masjid or Jannah is not for them. That was Bishr al-Hafi. None of this was for him. But he said in his own mind, very simply, the name of Allah should not be on the ground. And he did ihsan with it. He went up and beyond. He didn't just pick it up. He dusted it off and then he perfumed it and put it on a high place in his house. Sometime later, he sees in a dream, and some say someone else seen in a dream and came to tell him, that they heard a voice call out, "O Bishr, you raised my name off of the ground, so I'll raise yours. And you beautified my name. You tried to do something special with it. I'm going to make something special out of yours." And when he heard about this dream, even though he didn't decide to change before this, even though him picking up the name was just that, he didn't think anything further. But when they told him about this dream, or he saw it himself, he said to himself, this is a call from Allah, and I will not hang up. And he turned to his friends who he was partying with, his entourage, and he told them, this is the last gathering that you'll ever see me. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls, you answer. It's that simple. And you get everything. But anytime that you put that call on hold, anytime that you put it on snooze for another year or 2 or 5 or till next Ramadan or till you get married or whatever, other nonsensical checkpoints that you set for yourself, you should be terrified that you hang up and it will never ring again. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even for someone like Bishr, there is no one that He does not want. He sends that call over and over and over. You have to choose to pick up. Bishr decides to pick up and he changes his life forever. So he begins to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He begins to spend his time in the masajid. He begins now to abandon a lot of the indulgences that he had. In fact, he went to the most extremes in doing that. Some say, when they asked him, why are you called Al-Hafi? He said, my tawbah, me deciding to turn my life around, it so happened when I was barefoot. And so I wanted to remain in that state forever. I will never put on shoes again. And one story mentions that one of the righteous visited him to advise him back when his life was in disarray. And when he visited him, he wasn't home and a servant, or he was busy doing something, so his servant answered the door, and the righteous man asked the servant, the man who lives here, is he a free man or a slave? She says, no, he's a free man. Why would a slave live here? And then he left for whatever reason. And when Bishr, and he told her, the righteous man told her, if he knew what was good for him, he would be a slave. Like he's talking about a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's not talking about someone who physically owns him. He knew what was good for him, he would submit to Allah willingly. And he went away. So when Bishr heard this, it clicked with him. And he said, no, I want to be a slave. I want to change my life around. And he had to run to catch up to this man. And in his hurry, he didn't put on anything to wear. So his feet were bare. He didn't put on any shoes, meaning. Whatever the story is, and there's more than one narration about how he got the name, he decided that that's going to be his thing. He didn't want to say, I want people to call me Bishr al-Hafi and I want to be famous for it. He said, I'm not going to put on shoes. It's very extreme, right? It's very austere. You don't need to do that. But he's decided that I'm going to, when they asked him, why are you like this? Right? Islam allows you to own a home. Islam allows you to eat good food. You can eat Wagyu steak as long as it's halal. You can live it up as long as it's halal. Does Islam make everything haram? No. But he told them, I lived a life that was all about this stuff forever. That was all that was about. And that only ever increased me in distance from my Creator. So I'm not interested in any of it. They told him, we see you eating only dry, cracked bread. Like there's no main dish that you dip it in. He told them, when I sit and think of afiyah, well-being that Allah has given me in my body, in my deen, how He's taking care of me for so long, that becomes my main dish. That fills me up along with the bread. Like I don't want any more. Allah has already given me so much. This is how much of an epic turnaround that he had from the indulgence and the luxuries that he was chasing. He never married. He only lived a life of worship and devotion to deen. He went around learning the deen, but never becoming an official student. Like he never became an officially enrolled student of the big scholars and spending all his time there like some of his contemporaries, like Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Ahmad ibn Hanbal was one of his contemporaries, and they asked him about him, and he had the most praises for him, and they asked him about some of people like him, and Ma'ruf al-Qirahi and others, who they said, these people, they're worshippers, they devote themselves to the masajid and stuff, but we don't see them in the gatherings of knowledge as frequently as like us. They're not teachers like you, they're not scholars. And Imam Ahmad, he rebuked them. He said, be quiet. All of this that we're studying is to become like that. That's the end goal. Is to get that close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and have that meaning of a relationship with Him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives everybody the chance, and He raises the mention of those who do one sincere action. He became ultra famous in Baghdad, where he resided. And people would seek him from all over. And he would constantly try to avoid them. He would say, they heard him saying in his dua, oh Allah, don't make my share of this world or of you, of your blessings, to hear people saying, Bishr, Bishr. Like I don't want it to be my extent of the reward is people are saying my name, I'm famous, that's it, that's all you got. It's like, what a waste, that's not why I'm doing it. And he said, I started to seek the knowledge of hadith. I started to become a hadith student, to actually go to that level. But then I found that I strongly desired it. I strongly enjoyed being in those gatherings, speaking in that language, sharing those notes. And once I found that I strongly desired it and I wanted it, I denied myself of it. It's a good thing, you're seeking knowledge in the masjid. But he said, I noticed that myself, like my soul loved it, wanted to be part of that scene. Just to be a part of it. Sometimes it's like that. Going to the masjid is just a vibe. Sharing this thing is just a vibe. It doesn't really penetrate our hearts. It doesn't mean much. And he said that. He said when you see these people, certain people, when they just come to the gatherings, they just sit there in the peripheries. Yeah, that's good, but they're not there yet. Because it's not about listening to things. It's not about sharing things. In his time, there was a big movement because of, it's at the tail end of luxuries and a lot of wealth pouring into the ummah. By the end of the Sahaba's time, that first 100 years, all of a sudden there's this influx of insane amounts of wealth. So what happens to people when they get insane amounts of wealth? They get further and further from the deen. So at the end of that second 100 years, which is when around he exists, right, 150, 170, there's a movement now from people to go back the other direction. And that's where you have people like Hassan al-Basri and Abdullah ibn Mubarak and the four Imams, and then people like Bishr al-Hafi. They were born out of this reaction to the influx of the dunya, where they see the Muslim ummah losing the plot, starting to indulge like every other nation, starting to chase the same things that everyone else does, but we're supposed to be different, right? No? Okay. We're supposed to be different, right? We're supposed to have a completely different perspective and understanding of the reality. That's what we're supposed to do. But then they noticed that the Muslim ummah was no different than everybody else. Luxuries and amenities and going over the top with everything. So they created this opposite movement, and that's why people like Bishr were very extreme. That's why he didn't wear shoes, that's why he only ate bread. It was born out of this reaction to the extreme indulgence that they wanted to create an actual movement against. And they did. And that is the movement of Sufism, right? That's how Sufism started. It's not really a movement, but that's the idea of what Sufism really is. It's just a rebound from the corruption and the indulgences of this world. So this is really the meaning of it. It's not a movement, it's not a sect of Islam. It was born out of this rebound from the indulgences and the luxuries of this world. It was narrated about him so many different stories where people are trying to just be in his presence, trying to worship alongside him, trying to benefit from just his demeanor. Because he wasn't a big teacher. He didn't have classes, he didn't have a official following or schools or lessons, but people recognized that he was different. One of his contemporaries said, I told him once, I would like to accompany you. Like, let me accompany you, I want to observe you. And he was always mild about that. He always said, if you want to, but he didn't want people to make a thing about him, which they were constantly doing. So he says, I followed him once and he entered into a tent and I entered behind him and I saw him praying. And he prayed 4 rak'at very intently, very focused. And I heard him make dua at the end of them. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, humiliation is more dear to me than being honored in this world. Poverty is dearer to me than riches. And allow anything to happen to me as long as it doesn't deprive me of your love. He's been through honor. He's been through riches. He says, I don't want any of that. Everything that we seek and fight and kill for, he says that means nothing to me. Now that I've seen what it means to be on the other side of worshiping you and actually having you in my crosshairs, having you in my goals, having you in my heart. So the dua is, to me, is like, you would say, why would you say that? Ask to love Allah and to be honorable. Ask to be close to Allah and to be rich. Like, why do you have to ask for poverty? But this was just, again, from the extreme of him saying, I don't want anything to do with any of this. Completely renouncing it to the greatest extent. One time he went to visit one of the scholars to ask him some questions, and he wasn't home, and his servant answered the door. It was a young girl, and she answered the door, and she says, my master is not home. Who should I tell him came? He says, tell him it was Bishr al-Hafi. So she's a little girl. She doesn't know who this person is. So she says, Bishr al-Hafi, and she looks, she sees he has no shoes on. She says, you know, if I give you 2 silver pennies, people won't call you that anymore. She's basically like roasting him. She's telling him, like, I can donate some money and then you don't have to be made fun of anymore. I can help you out. And, you know, she's ridiculing him as a little kid. But it was completely, he shared this story with others himself. He wasn't ashamed of it. He found it humorous that thinks that I'm poor, thinks that I'm barefoot by circumstance. I'm barefoot by choice. Right? This is how I want to be. It's amusing to you, but I'm on a completely different wavelength. I'm looking for something so different. He said, my favorite meals were eggplant, meat, and a special thin bread that they used to make. And I haven't had them for 40 years. Because I never found a dirham, a silver coin, that I was confident enough in its purity, to spend on something that I'm going to eat. Because haram wealth that purchases halal things, that's going to trickle inside of it. Someone could buy a halal meal, but with haram wealth that they stole or sold alcohol for, or whatever other means, the riba. That halal meal is tainted. It may not provide the nutrition it's supposed to provide. It's not going to provide the health it's supposed to provide. It may result in illnesses that it would have otherwise not resulted in because of its haram source. None of that may happen. And it may create a spiritual block, even worse. The Prophet ﷺ said, a man will travel, he's dusty, he's disheveled, he's needy, he's desperate, he's destitute. He raises his hands and he says, Ya Rab, my Lord, my Lord. وَلَكِنْ مَطْعَمُهُ حَرَامٌ وَشْرَبُهُ حَرَامٌ وَمَلْبَسُهُ حَرَامٌ وَغُذِّيَ بِالْحَرَامِ. His clothing is haram, his food is haram, his drink is haram, he's nurtured with haram, his whole existence comes from haram. فَأَنَّا يُسْتَجَابُ لَهُ. How can he receive an answer? The Prophet ﷺ said. How do you expect this to be answered when his whole life trajectory is in the opposite direction, but now he wants to raise his hands? So he was so intent on earning halal that he basically deprived himself for decades. They told him, why do you live that kind of life? And like we said, he said, I've seen the other end. It doesn't that joy, temporary joy that you receive from it, it pales in comparison to the distance that it takes you away from Allah. So I'm not interested. That was his main spiel. That was his main point in response. He would fast and pray so much that people began to say he fasts for days at a time. He breaks his fast once every 3 days. And he prays the entire night without sleeping. So one day he hears this and he says, what on earth is this? And he cries from hearing this exaggeration. He says, this never happened. I never prayed an entire night that I can think of, and I fast and break it every single night like all other people, like a normal person. And I hope this is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed people to think better of me than I really am as a favor. I hope this is what it is. Otherwise, I'm doomed if I'll be held to account to what these people think of me. And this is from the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who wants to be liked? Who wants friends? Who wants to be liked, to have friends? I don't know where you got 2 months from. Someone check that guy out. He's definitely not okay. I said, who wants to have friends and be like, thank you, some normal people here. You can have more. Kick them out? No, that's not what we do here. Could I say wallah? You get out. No, you're welcome too. Okay. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves a person, the Prophet ﷺ told us, he announces it to who? To Jibreel, the leader of the angels. Ya Jibreel, inni uhib fulan fa uhibbah. Oh Jibreel, I love so and so. And he names the person. Can you imagine Allah saying your name to Jibreel alayhi salam? Hey, PSA for the heavens, from Allah himself. Oh Jibreel, I love this person by name. So you love them. It's not your choice. You have to love them. It's a command from Allah. So Jibreel, he's an angel. He says, done. And he has to do his job. So he calls out to the entire heavens, all the angels, the trillions of them that occupy the heavens. And the Prophet ﷺ told us there's no handspan or arm's length in all of the heavens on top of us except there's an angel standing in prayer or in ruku' or in sujood or making dua to Allah. So he announces to these masses and he says, oh angels, Allah loves so and so do I, so you love him. And they love him as well. They say, done. فَيُوضَعَ لَهُ الْقُبُولُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. And so acceptance is placed for him or her on earth. Doesn't mean everyone's going to love them. But there's going to be enough of a wave that they're loved by, to them, everyone. Does everyone love the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Yes and no. Yes. No, I'm saying that's not what I meant. What I meant was that the whole world clearly doesn't love him. But there's not a single place that you'll go in the world except people love him. There's no instance on earth that passes except his name is being mentioned. So it's overwhelmingly in his favor. And you could copy paste like that with all the righteous. They don't die hated. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does that for them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us beloved to him and all others. Mohammad ibn Qudama says, I was walking with Bishr al-Hafi, and as we were walking in the streets, a drunk man jumped on top of him. And he began to kiss his hands and kiss his feet and hug him and basically ask him to pray for him. And he said, Bishr didn't move. He let him. He wasn't repulsed. He didn't say, get away from me. He let him until he finished pleading and begging him for prayer. And then he left. The drunk man just left. And he said, Bishr didn't move. He just waited for the person to finish. And when he left, he began to cry. And he said, a man is loved by another for the goodness that he assumes. Like that man assumed good of me, so he loved me because of that. While the one who is beloved perhaps may not be saved. Perhaps the lover will be saved and the beloved, who knows his affair. He's saying maybe this man, why did he just do that? Because he assumes good of me. He loves me for the good that he thinks of me. Maybe, look how he's thinking. He's saying maybe this assumption of his, despite his evil state, he's a drunk man, that love of him, that love of me, because it's due to goodness, maybe Allah will forgive him just because of that. And as for me, he's saying, I have no idea. I'm still up in the air. But what you just saw there, like that was his conclusion. He didn't think like, what a weird guy, or you make dua yourself. Or his conclusion was, that love was for good. Whether I have that good or not, who knows? But just because he assumed it, maybe Allah will forgive him. So that's very sincere. Because every time we see people in an evil state, we assume the worst. We use that experience to assume good of ourselves. I would never do that. Or I learned this lesson from this person. Thank you for teaching me your state. Thank you for being a living blessing for me. He didn't see that at all. It wasn't. You can't fake that. You can't fake that sincerity and that sincere reflection. And that's what leads to forgiveness. Allotting zero value to yourself and all of it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the fastest track to being honored and forgiven, just as we see with Bishr Hafi. He was once in a gathering and they told him, like we said before, you never narrate hadith. So why don't you just share with us a hadith that you learned? Like, we know that you go to these gatherings, but you're not part of that scholarly student class. Why not? Just teach us some hadith. So he began to say one, and he began to say the chain of narration. Back then they'd say the whole chain, going all the way back to the Prophet ﷺ, 5, 10 people. So he started and he stopped, and they said, what happened? We almost got him, right? We almost got him to share something. He said, as soon as I started speaking, I felt pleased with myself. And that's my rule. If I'm pleased with my silence, I'm going to say something. If I'm pleased with my speech, I'm going to stay silent. I don't exist to make me happy. His own ego, his own nafs has no place in his very existence. It's all about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exclusively. When it came time for him to die, and he died around the year 840, he was around 70 years old, or 70 to 75, he commanded his contemporaries, a lot of his colleagues, to gather all of his notebooks and all of his writings and all of his own notes, and they gathered them together, and they were 18 chests. 18, like treasure chests worth of writing material. Of course, writing material was bigger back then, but still, it's a ton. And then when they gathered, he told them, go to such and such a place and bury it. Because he didn't see that anything that he wrote was worth being shared. And he didn't want people to flock around his teachings or what he did, because he's seen how they were around him. So they take these chests, bury them, and no work by Bishr exists today, since he died over almost 1200 years ago. There's no book or writing that exists from him, but there's no book of spirituality or tafsir, any of the ancient works that you go through, the medieval works that you go through, except you'll see his writings and what he said and what he taught. And people were praising him and quoting him until today, over 1200 years later. As much as he tried to put that out, because he said, I don't want it about me, but because it was for Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it take the world. And there's masajid named after him all the way from India to Morocco. All right, I'm glad you're happy. I'm glad I made that kid's day. I didn't say thank you. Some quotes by Bishr Hafi to end the night. Before that, what do you desire? And how do you control it? So a lot of people, they have no collar on their desires. Just like Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he said your desire is like a mount. It's like a steed, a horse. If you don't put a bridle on it, the bridle that goes inside of its mouth and you choose whether it goes a harness. If you don't put that on it, you have no control over it. It will decide the direction. But if you put a harness on it, and that harness is revelation, the Quran, the Sunnah. If you put a harness on it, it may resist you at times, but it will always respond when you keep it in check. It's still a wild animal, but the bridle allows you to keep it in check. Without the bridle, not only will you not keep it in check, but you have zero control over it. With the bridle, it still resists. It still leans towards certain things. It still wants certain things. But then you're going to keep it in check with revelation. So Bishr Hafi, he didn't put a bridle, he didn't put a harness on his desires. He killed them. He absolutely slaughtered them. To the point where, like we said, he would never eat food. Regular food. He didn't get married. Islam does not command that. And in fact, doesn't really approve of that. But this was his decision, right? This was the extreme that he went to, bouncing back from the other extreme in his life. But the point is not to do things like that. I don't want you guys to walk barefoot or to be cold or to be hungry. The point of this is, what do you desire? How do you keep it in check? For most people, they desire everything and anything, and there's no checks and balances. إِنْهُمْ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ سَبِيلًا. They are like cattle, or even more misguided, because cattle were created to do that. That's their destiny. That's not yours. Allah means good for you. He means better for you than what you do and what you intend. And Bishr al-Hafi's story proves that. I want to share with you 3 quick quotes from him to end the night. The first one, he said, "It is not real affection when you love what your beloved hates." It's powerful. Listen closely. Wake up. He said, it's not real affection. It's not real love if you love something that your beloved hates. If you love someone and they hate something and you love that thing, he's questioning your love to that person. If you love, who loves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We're going to put our hands up. It's a default. We know. We know that there's no other possible answer. Even if I'm not really feeling it, I'm not really sure, I'm going to raise up my hand because I know I have to. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us all beloved to Him and make Him the most beloved to us. Allahumma ameen. I want you to gauge your love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the ways that I want you to gauge it in this coming week, do an experiment for yourself, is look at the haram things that are enticing to you. Haram things that you like. And consider, why do I like them? While knowing they're haram. What is the discrepancy? What's the missing link here? The answers are very few and they're all scary. Do I not believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all-knowing? Do I not believe that He's the most compassionate, that He wills good for me? Do I not believe that He wills best? Because those are the only possible answers. Because if I believed all these things 100% with conviction, and He said this was haram, that should be the end of it. So where is my conviction lacking? That's what the question is going to stare at you in the face. It's not 100% certainty. There's something missing. And that's okay for now. It's a pending disaster, but if you fix it, that's fine. It's okay that you found it and you fixed it, but if you never considered it, then it's only a matter of time before one of those haram things become tempting enough to break your conviction entirely. And that will just be the first domino. And then your faith will follow suit. Hopefully not. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect all of us, but that's the reality. So it's a very interesting gauge, an interesting meter to check. How do I feel about the things Allah made haram? Do I hate them? Do I despise them? Because very often, like we say, we make tawbah and we don't do that haram thing anymore. But then we sit in a gathering with our boys or our girls and we say, hey, remember those days? They were awesome. And we laugh about them. They were so great. It doesn't sound like tawbah. That sounds like you're itching for another chance. And we want to show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we really mean it. The next quote, "He will never taste the sweetness of the hereafter, the one who enjoys people's attention." Everybody enjoys attention. Everybody, the most pleasant sound is what? Sound of your name. Maybe that guy. So the most pleasant sound to anybody is the sound of their name. If you're in a huge gathering and you hear your name, right away, it's something that you grabs your attention. Who's calling me and why? When you're mentioned in a bigger gathering, you love it. This is human nature. And not all of it is evil, but it's a human weakness. It's always a weakness to want people to praise you or to say your name or to give you attention. And then in deen, in actions of worship, it's especially deadly. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need any of it, like we said. And He is the only one who's going to reward it. So it doesn't make sense to do any action with any human being receiving any share. So it has to be exclusively for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And the idea of yearning for the hereafter, working for the hereafter, He's telling you that's a foreign concept if you still yearn for people's attention. Get rid of that first, and then maybe the hereafter will be more enticing, more tempting, more worth it for you. The last one he said, and this is the summary of his entire life. And the power of this quote, if we can internalize it, that's all we'll need. This is how the Quran begins. This is what it all comes down to. This is the number one quote of not just Bishr al-Hafi, but almost every single thing in our deen. Glad tidings to the one who leaves a present, temporary desire for a promised hidden one. That's what it's all about. There's desires, there's temptations, there's luxuries, there's enjoyments in front of a person, but they're fleeting. They're going to pass by very quickly. They're temporary. And you do that in hopes of a hidden one, so you don't see it, you don't have access to it, and it is longer lasting. That's a very basic equation that we've spoken about before, right? Like one of the scholars, he said, who remembers the example of the wood and the gold? Anyone? You weren't even here. I'm just waiting for the right joke that I'm going to roast you to oblivion. It's coming. I'm just waiting for the good one. You too, the kid who's barking like a seal. It's coming to you too. I'm waiting. I'm just waiting for a really good one. These are your boys, Yusuf? They'll find the help they're looking for. It was the example of temporary wood. Would you rather have temporary or permanent wood? Right? That was the example, the metaphor that the scholar gave. And no one in their right mind would take the temporary gold because it will be gone in an instant. It can't be benefited with. While the permanent gold is a permanent wood, even though it's less in value, it's permanent. So he said that's any logical decision. No one would take the temporary gold in exchange for permanent wood. He said no one would do that logically. So he said that's not even the deal we're talking about though. The deal that we're talking about, the dunya is temporary wood and the hereafter is permanent gold. So anyone who makes this decision now, that's even worse. Because when we said temporary gold for permanent wood, some people were like, well, I could sell it. No, it's not part of the hypothetical. The whole hypothetical is that you'll have it for an instant and then it's gone. So you can't benefit from the gold, while the wood, even if it's with it, so you can figure something out. And then he's saying the hereafter, the actual metaphor is switched around, that this worldly life is temporary wood and the hereafter is permanent gold. So anyone who chooses temporary wood that will disappear in exchange of permanent gold that they'd always have, that's just the most absolute foolish decision. But while all of us would agree on that, that's a decision that we make every single day, where we choose the temporary wood in lieu of the permanent gold. We choose the dunya over the hereafter. We choose a fleeting desire, a temporary pleasure, a small gathering, a refusal to comply to something that we know to be true because of a small fleeting pleasure that it provides. We refuse to put our foot down and say, stop saying that, that's backbiting, because we don't want to ruin the gathering. We don't want to ruin the joke. We don't want to be the killjoy. That's exactly what we just did. We chose temporary wood, a temporary fleeting desire, which is this nice gathering, friendship, jokes. And then we let go of permanent gold in the hereafter, which is the reward for putting a stop to this, for defending your brother or sister's honor in their absence. We made a bad call. And we just constantly do that over and over, then wonder, why can't we feel it? Why do we feel so far? Why is it hard to come close? We're constantly shortchanging ourselves and making the wrong decision. You don't have to do it as epic and as extreme as Bishr al-Hafi did. Not here sharing his story for any of us to do exactly what he did, besides honoring the name of Allah. Go up and beyond at any time, any opportunity you have to honor the name of Allah. If it's on a piece of paper on the floor, or if it's being ridiculed in a gathering, or very often amongst Muslims themselves where they use something in our deen as the butt of their jokes, you say, no. I'll let you joke about my family first, even though that's not okay, before I let you joke about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That red line is above other red lines. Not that it's okay to joke about my family or my honor, but that would be, even if that's not okay, it's more acceptable than my deen or my messenger or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Find another butt of your joke. People always react to that saying, relax. No, I'm relaxed. I'm telling you this is not okay. You didn't see me punch you in the face yet. That's coming. But for now, I'm just simply telling you that's unacceptable, and I'm here to end that joke and let you know, absolutely not. It's not funny. It's not acceptable. So honor the name of Allah with ihsan, and never give it the back seat. Never drop it down on the priority list. If you have the opportunity to honor Allah's name, to raise it in status. But going back to what I was saying, in terms of the asceticism, the zuhd, refraining from the dunya, controlling your desires, definitely don't want anyone here to do what Bishr al-Hafi did. For the simple number one reason, which is you are not going to be able to handle it. It's going to crack your resolve. You won't have the ability to eat so simply or to live so austerely. It's not possible. And it's not demanded of you by Islam or by our discussion here. But what I do want you to take from the story is the attitude. My desire needs to be on a leash, needs to be controlled, needs to be regulated, even in halal. And I'm going to always keep my eyes on that hidden promised reward instead of the immediate fleeting one that distracts so many people and causes them to make the wrong decisions all the time. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those who are honored by Him, those who raise His word and raise His name. And the last thing, sorry, that I forgot as well is that Bishr Hafi, and I said this before, but just to conclude with it again, he was not a scholar. He's not mentioned in the same list as Imam al-Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad, maybe as a chronological contemporary, like at the same time, but not as a peer. Not everybody in our deen was a scholar or, memorized tons of information. Some people just simply raised the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and then spent their whole life trying to please Him, and Allah made them famous for it. And they didn't come from a holy background. He was a sinner. He was someone that we wouldn't allow in a masjid or we wouldn't accommodate. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raised his status very high. He's not from the Sahaba. He was 100 years later. This is all simply to say what? This could be you. Very easily. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises your rank, gives you a superhero status in this world and the hereafter, all because of a simple desire to raise His mention and to raise His name. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us our shortcomings and to give us a share of these epic legacies in righteousness and in teaching others. We'll take 2 questions on each side. Call it a night. No. Two questions each side? Sure. It's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. So it'll change from setting to setting. Let's say I'm in class. I was in class once. It was sociology. I don't know why I was taking sociology. It has nothing to do with my major. But I was in that class. It was like sociology and film. Society and film. Society and film. I have no idea or what the class was about. But what I do was there was a segment. Okay. Can you hear me now? You sure? You good? Just making sure. So it was society and film. If this happens again, I'm done. And there was like 2-3 weeks we were talking about Greek mythology. Why was I taking society and film? Why was society and film talking about Greek mythology? No idea. I had a D+ in that class too. So what was the point of the story, Mohammad? Oh yeah. So I in the midst of that Greek mythology, like we're just hearing about it, and they're talking about gods and like making a lot of jokes. So obviously I'm not going to preach there or stand up, hey guys, let me give you a khutbah about what God is in Islam. That wouldn't be welcome, nor would it be the setting for it, nor would I have the opportunity to do it. But I felt like as a Muslim sitting here for days at a time, because it was like a total of 6-7 classes where they're not just talking about the Greek gods, which are fictional characters I can just ignore, but they're extrapolating a lot of those points about God Himself. Like they're talking in that fashion. So I felt like the very least is I express my dissent. I'm not okay with this. That's the very least that I could do. Because I'm powerless to stop it. It's not a religious setting at all. It's not like a discussion of religion. And I felt like in my analysis, you could feel free to give me your take on it, that there's no teaching to be done here. The discussion is not really about God. It's not about finding out about God. It's about, for whatever reason, that this film class is discussing it. But because it's so blasphemous, it's so evil, I felt like as a Muslim, I need to say something. I can't have these people, these 10, 12 classmates of mine show up on the day of judgment and say, we spoke about this for hours, he never said anything. That I can't have. So I said something. And the professor listened to me for a few minutes. He's like, yeah, Mohammad, we're not talking about any of that. Shut up, He didn't say shut up, but he said, everything you just spoke about, this isn't theology. We're talking about entertainment. And I was like, yeah, I know. I didn't tell him this whole day of judgment stuff because that'd be weird. So, but I told him, but I expressed it. Nobody reacted, but I felt that's the least I can do. I can't be silent. I can't go under the radar. And the way that I tell people to gauge it is if they were talking about your loved one, would you just say, I can't make any waves, let it slide? They're talking trash about your dad or your uncle or something or your mom. All right, you could do that, whatever. I don't condone that, but so why are we so moved by that? But then this is like, it's okay. Everyone has their own opinion. I guess it's okay. Well, this is even more dear to me than my parents, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this deen. So in those settings, to answer your question, brother that asked the question, to answer it, it's in those settings, you could only perhaps just say a couple of words to express what you believe, to make it clear that I don't believe with any of this. In another setting, you might be in charge and you might have the ability to limit other perspectives in a way that doesn't harm you or harm your business or isn't illegal. Meaning we're not going to put up this narrative here because we don't believe in it. And you have the ability to control that, to speak about it in a more forceful way, like to make more decisions. So it depends on the long answer short is it depends on your ability to put a stop to it. Physical violence is never in the picture, right? Where someone's disrespecting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and then you're going to physically attack them. That's never something that you need to do. What would you do at that point if they're not stopping and they're increasing? You walk away. Get yourself out of that setting. You're not mandated with physically stopping it. One question on this side. Go ahead, Sabi. Yeah, that's what I said. Sufism is not a sect. Elaborate on that. So with the story, that's as much as I want to say about it here. We could delve into it a little bit more later. But the word Sufi itself comes from a couple of origins that they propose. One of them is Suf, which means Suf is not cotton. It isn't. Suf is wool. I don't know why I found it so funny that he said cotton, but it was funny because it's not cotton, it's wool. It's like close, but anyway. Yeah, thank you, bro. I just keep stroking his ego because that's obviously what he wants. He needs the attention, so I'm giving it to him. The Suf is wool, and wool is famously a cheap, harsh material. So in response to what we were discussing earlier, which is the luxuries that entered into the ummah, and people began to indulge in them in a very un-Islamic way, it created this counter movement against luxuries and against indulgence. And a big part of that counter movement were people like Bishr al-Hafi, who purposely went up and beyond. Yusuf, you have something going on now? Should I get out of here? You good? Okay. People like Bishr al-Hafi who purposely went to the other extreme, knowing that Islam doesn't mandate that, but to cancel that out. It was born in response to the luxuries. So part of that response were some people who would purposely buy suf, which is wool, because it's harsher and cheaper. So they're purposely buying the lower quality material because they're not about this life. So some say they were called Sufi. Some say it goes even further back to the time of the Sahaba, which is it comes from Ahl al-Suffa. Suffa is like this little area in the back of where Prophet ﷺ's masjid. It's called Ahl al-Suffa. It was the only shaded area in the back. And Ahl al-Suffa, the people of that area of the Suffa, were the poor companions like Abu Hurairah, who migrated to Medina with nothing. So they couldn't start a family, they couldn't start a business, they just lived in the back of the masjid and lived off of people's charity and spent their days learning from the Prophet ﷺ. So they say it came from them because they were very poor and austere. So Ahl al-Suffa, Sufi, that's where it comes from. The third origin, they say, comes from the word tasfiyah or safa, which means purity. Because it was a movement that was aiming to purify the society from the corruptions that seeped in, which is the luxuries and all this other stuff. So that's the origins of the word and the origins of the movement. As time passed, people like Bishr al-Hafi, Hassan al-Basri, and these others who became the first Sufis, people began to flock around them to learn, teach us how to navigate through life because we've forgotten, right? The people have gotten far. Show us how you make dhikr, show us how you make dua, show us how you pray sunnah. Of course, we have the sunnah, but the sunnah left a lot of these things open. Dua, dhikr, nafl. You could do as many of them as you want, right? And in whatever fashion as you want. These things were left open. So people began to hang out with them and record what they did. And some of them made actual movements. These are the dhikr practices of Sheikh so-and-so. Here's the dua practice of Sheikh so-and-so. And it became a movement that people began to practice. Even more structure. They began to create even more structure around it, which is what happens with everything over time. It's normal. It's what happened to fiqh. It's what happened to aqidah, the different Islamic sciences. And then they create more systems around it, and then over hundreds of years, these systems developed. Some of them got, bid'ah introduced into it, things that are not from our deen, like those people who twirl and stuff. That's not from our deen, and that's not part of Sufism at all. It's fake Sufism, with all due respect to those people. And then over time, it has a lot of these teachings and these systems that need to be refined by the Quran and Sunnah and need to be filtered. That's a brief summary of Sufism that I did in 9 minutes. Good job, Mohammad. Thank you. One more on each side and we'll call it a night. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Rami. Oh, great question. Any steps that we can take towards leashing our desires? Yes. So when it comes to food and drink, what can you do? You fast. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you needing food and drink, but it's so important to regulate it that He mandated a fast at least once a year for 30 days. But then the rest of it is open to you. You could do, what are the other fasts you can do? Mondays and Thursdays, that's twice a week. What else? 13th, 14th, 15th of each Islamic month, which is right now. We just finished the 13th, tomorrow's the 14th, 15th is Sunday. You could do 14th, 15th, 16th. 3 days of any Islamic month, but the preferred is 13th, 14th, 15th, which is this weekend. What else? Yes, sir. Okay, I would answer your question, but you're interrupting the whole time, so I'm not going to. So the Mondays and Thursdays, 3 white days of each month, the day of Arafah, 10 days of Muharram, or the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, the 10th of Muharram, these are all fasts that will help you regulate food and drink. When it comes to your gaze, you're commanded to do what? Lower your gaze. Don't be freely throwing it around and looking at everything that you see. You should be controlling it to make sure it doesn't land on things haphazardly. And if it does, then you avert it. So you could also do the Bishr al-Hafi, but not to the same extent, but finding something that you really like, you really enjoy, and purposefully tailoring it. If you do it 5 times a week, say I'm going to do 4. I'm going to lower my enjoyment just a little bit. Don't be too austere and too extreme, but just so that you can properly tailor your desires and put some self-control in your regimen. That's all. Is that answer, Rami? Is that good? One more? Are you the question delegator? Okay, it's fine. Fasting on your birthday wouldn't be a sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ, he didn't fast on his birthday. He fasted on Monday and he said, I was born on a Monday, so out of gratitude towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's a little bit of a stretch to bring it to fasting on your birthday. So if someone were to simply choose, I want to fast on this day out of gratitude, it's not the biggest deal, but if they fast on their birthday all the time and it's like their thing, then it would be, where did you get this? Like, why are we standardizing things? So acts like fasting, dhikr, dua, sunnah prayers, they were generally left up to us. Meaning if I were to randomly decide I want to fast on my birthday, that's completely fine. But if I'm doing it because it's my birthday and I'm standardizing it now, I fast every birthday, that's not, I'm turning it into a standard practice, which we were told not to do. Because the only one who sets standard practices is who? The Prophet ﷺ. And it's through him that we know that dhikr, dua, and nafl are not standard. They could be up to you. And that even has some discussion that we won't do here. Jazakumullah khairan, everyone. Subhanaka wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Sallallahu barak ala sayyidina Muhammad wa sahbihi wa sallam. Just a quick reminder, we have the Miftah class next Friday, so we won't be meeting here. The Miftah class is about the biography of Bilal ibn Rabah radiyallahu anhu. It's called From Shackles to the Minaret. How he went from being a slave and oppressed by Quraysh to being one of the leading figures of our deen and the first mu'adhin. So please do join us with Mufti Abdul Wahab on Friday, inshallah. Sallallahu barak ala sayyidina Muhammad wa sahbihi wa sallam.